What if you turned on your car tomorrow morning and the fuel gauge never moved, not because your tank was empty, but because every petrol station in your country had run dry overnight? What if the heating in your home went cold in the middle of winter, not because of a bill you forgot to pay, but because the gas that powers it simply no longer existed in sufficient quantities to go around? What if the factories that produce your food, the trucks that deliver it, the planes that fly your medicines across continents all ground to a halt simultaneously because the single most critical resource powering the modern world had been cut off at its source? Ladies and gentlemen, that scenario, once dismissed as the fevered imagination of doomsday economists, is no longer a distant theoretical warning. It is the living, breathing reality that global energy experts are now confronting in real time as the US-Israel war with Iran escalates into what could become the most catastrophic energy disruption this planet has ever seen. Good evening, and welcome to this urgent special report. Tonight, we are not simply reporting on a war happening thousands of miles away in a region most people only see on a map. Tonight, we are reporting on a crisis that is traveling at speed from the Persian Gulf directly into your daily life, into your wallet, your fuel tank, your heating bill, and your grocery costs. Because the war unfolding between the United States, Israel, and Iran is not confined to the battlefield. It is a war being fought across oil fields and shipping lanes, across refineries and tanker routes, across the very infrastructure that keeps 7 billion people alive and functioning every single day on this earth. Tonight, we take you through 10 critical, undeniable facts about what is happening to the world's oil and gas supply, and we will show you, clearly and without hesitation, exactly why the world is staring into an energy abyss. This is the story of what happens when the world's most volatile region becomes the world's most dangerous supply chain bottleneck. Stay with us from beginning to end, because every single word of what follows affects you personally. To truly grasp the magnitude of what is happening to global energy markets right now, we must begin with a clear-eyed understanding of Iran's place in the world's oil architecture. And then we must talk about a stretch of water so narrow you could almost swim across it, yet so strategically vital that its disruption is capable of bringing the global economy to its knees. Iran is not a minor player in the world of energy. Let that be stated plainly and powerfully from the outset. Iran ranks firmly among the top 5 oil-producing nations on this entire planet. Beneath its soil lie massive, proven reserves that have made it one of the most energy-rich countries in human history. For decades, Iran has been a cornerstone of global oil supply, and even under the crushing weight of Western sanctions, it continued to pump and export oil at significant volumes, with most of that oil flowing directly to China, its most important energy customer. And this is where the story becomes critically important for your understanding of why this war is causing such an explosive shock to global markets. Here is the key insight that many people miss. The West was not primarily buying Iranian oil. So at first glance, you might think, if the West doesn't buy from Iran, why should a US-Israel war with Iran send oil prices skyrocketing across the world? The answer is this: it was never simply about Iran's direct oil exports. It was always about what a war in this region does to the entire energy ecosystem of the Gulf. And at the absolute center of that ecosystem sits one of the most strategically important geographical features on the face of this earth, the Strait of Hormuz. Picture a narrow channel of water, just 21 miles wide at its tightest point, sitting between the Persian Gulf and the open ocean. Through that 21-mile bottleneck flows approximately 20% of all the oil consumed by the entire world every single day. 20%. 1/5 of all global oil supply passing through a waterway you could cross in a short boat ride. And today, that waterway is effectively at a standstill. Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has ground to a near-complete halt. Tankers are not moving. Oil is not flowing eastward. The entire supply chain that feeds Asia, Europe, and beyond with Gulf energy has been severed, not partially, not temporarily in some minor way, but comprehensively and with devastating effect. Saudi Arabia itself, the kingdom that has always been the world's great oil stabilizer, the producer that could always open the taps wider when the world needed more, has announced it is cutting back on production, not by choice, but because it physically cannot move its oil out through waters that have become a war zone. When Saudi Arabia cannot ship its oil, the entire world feels it. But the choking of the Strait of Hormuz is only one dimension of this crisis. Because across the Gulf, the physical infrastructure of oil and gas production, the refineries, the oil fields, the storage terminals, the tankers is now under sustained and escalating military attack. And the pace of destruction is accelerating with every passing day. Let us walk you through what has happened across the region in just the last 48 hours, because the sheer scale and speed of these attacks is something that demands to be heard in full. In Bahrain, the largest oil refinery in the entire country was directly struck. A massive fire erupted. It was brought under control, but not before the damage had reached a level so severe that Bahrain's biggest energy company was compelled to issue a formal declaration of force majeure. Now, for those unfamiliar with that term, force majeure is the legal and contractual equivalent of a country raising a white flag to its energy obligations. It means we cannot deliver what we promised. We cannot meet our contracts. Our capacity to supply has been destroyed. Bahrain, a major Gulf energy hub, effectively told the world it could no longer guarantee its oil commitments. And Bahrain was not alone. In Kuwait, a strike targeted fuel tankers directly at the country's international airport, setting them ablaze and triggering chaos across Kuwait's energy infrastructure. Kuwait's own energy company followed Bahrain's lead and declared its own force majeure, announcing cuts to production and formally acknowledging it could not honor its supply obligations. Two major Gulf energy producers, both declaring force majeure within the same 48-hour window. That is not a coincidence. That is a coordinated, systematic assault on the Gulf's energy production capacity. Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia, multiple waves of drone attacks were launched directly at one of the kingdom's largest oil fields. The Saudi defense systems intercepted those drones, but the very fact that such strikes reached deep into Saudi Arabia's most critical energy infrastructure sent shockwaves through every trading floor on Earth. And in the open waters of the Gulf itself, an oil tanker was struck directly. The message being sent is unmistakable. No facility, no tanker, no terminal in this region is beyond reach. The financial markets responded with immediate and explosive force. Crude oil prices surged to as high as $118 per barrel on Brent futures, a staggering price level reached in just 10 days of conflict. And the surge was not limited to crude oil. Refined petroleum products, diesel, jet fuel, all spiked sharply. Liquefied natural gas prices exploded upward because the Gulf supplies a critical portion of the world's LNG, and that supply is now deeply threatened. The numbers are not statistics on a trading screen. They're a warning siren to every nation on Earth. Now we arrive at the part of this story that makes it undeniably personal, the part where the fire burning on Gulf oil facilities travels directly through the global supply chain and arrives at the forecourt of your local petrol station, at the meter in your kitchen, and at the checkout of your supermarket. Because these prices are not staying in the financial markets. They're moving to consumers at a speed that is frankly unprecedented. In the United Kingdom, one of Europe's largest motoring organizations has already issued a stark warning. Petrol prices at the pump are heading toward 150 pence per liter, and potentially beyond that threshold if the conflict persists. In countries across Europe, Asia, and the Americas, retailers and fuel suppliers are passing on these cost increases to ordinary consumers almost instantaneously, faster than at any point during the Ukraine energy crisis. Faster than during the COVID supply chain collapse, faster than economists expected. The pain is arriving before people have even had time to prepare for it. And beyond the immediate pain at the pump lies an even darker economic horizon. The European Union has formally and publicly warned that if this conflict is sustained over the coming weeks and months, the world could face a full stagflation shock, the most feared combination in all of macroeconomics. Stagflation means inflation rising sharply while economic growth collapses at the same time. It means prices going up while jobs disappear. It means your money worth less while the things you need to buy cost more. Global economists are not speaking cautiously about this possibility. They are sounding an urgent alarm, warning that the inflation progress made over the past 2 years could be entirely reversed, and that the economic damage inflicted on the world's most vulnerable populations would be severe and long-lasting. And then there are the Gulf states themselves, the nations of Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, who find themselves trapped inside a dilemma so dangerous and so complex that there may be no good answer available to them. For decades, these kingdoms invested heavily in hosting American military bases on their soil. The logic was simple and seemingly sound. American bases meant American protection. American military presence in the region was the ultimate security guarantee for nations whose entire economic model rested on the safe and uninterrupted export of oil and gas. But that guarantee is now being tested as never before. Iran strikes are landing on their refineries. Drones are targeting their oil fields. And the Gulf states are absorbing these blows in near silence, calling for de-escalation through diplomacy, refusing to strike back directly because they correctly fear that retaliation would only invite larger and more devastating counterattacks. But diplomacy is finding no traction. Attempts at negotiation over the weekend failed. And with China unable and Russia unwilling to offer any alternative security umbrella, these nations are standing exposed, wealthy, vulnerable, and running out of options. There is one final, critical piece of this energy puzzle that every viewer must understand tonight, one that has been generating enormous attention from intelligence analysts, energy strategists, and military planners across the world. It involves a small island sitting in the northern reaches of the Persian Gulf, an island that most people have never heard of, and yet an island whose fate may determine the future of global oil supply more than any single location on Earth. That island is Kharg Island, and it is Iran's energy jugular. Kharg Island is Iran's primary oil export terminal. Everything flows through it. The island holds approximately 30 million barrels of oil storage capacity, an enormous reserve that dwarfs what most people imagine when they picture a single facility. It is the central loading point for Iranian oil tankers heading out to customers across Asia and beyond. Under normal conditions, Iran exports approximately 1.5 million barrels of oil per day, and the vast majority of that oil passes through Kharg Island before it reaches the open ocean. Now, speculation is intensifying about whether the United States or Israel might move to target or neutralize Kharg Island directly as part of this conflict's escalation. If that were to happen, Iran's oil export capacity would be effectively destroyed overnight. The ripple effects on global energy markets would be immediate, catastrophic, and potentially irreversible in the short term. But the most terrifying dimension of this entire crisis, the one that keeps energy analysts, economists, and national security experts awake at night, is the possibility that what we are seeing today is not the ceiling of this conflict, but merely its opening chapter. Analysts across the world are now issuing a chilling warning. This war may not stay contained within the Gulf. The conditions for a broader regional escalation are forming with frightening speed. There are real and credible scenarios in which other major regional powers are drawn into this conflict. Countries like Turkey could find themselves pulled into a war that began between the US, Israel, and Iran, but which could spiral into something far larger, far more complex, and far more dangerous. If that happens, the global energy market's ability to plan, to stabilize, and to recover would collapse entirely. Market players are already doing nothing more than hedging their bets, holding on to whatever oil they have, and trying to sell it at whatever price they can get. That is not a functioning market. That is a market in survival mode. So let us end tonight with absolute clarity, and let us speak directly to every person watching this report, wherever you are in the world. What you have heard tonight is not speculation. It is not the exaggerated language of sensational journalism. It is the documented, verified, expert-confirmed reality of what is happening to the world's oil and gas supply right now. Iran, a top 5 global oil producer, is at war. The Strait of Hormuz, the single most critical oil corridor on Earth, is paralyzed. Gulf oil facilities from Bahrain to Kuwait to Saudi Arabia are burning. Crude prices have exploded to $118 a barrel in just 10 days. Two nations have declared force majeure on their energy contracts. Petrol prices are already hitting consumers with a speed and force that outpaces every previous crisis. A stagflation shock is being formally warned about by the world's most respected economic institutions. Kharg Island, Iran's energy heart, sits in the crosshairs of potential military action. And the entire conflict is threatening to expand beyond the Gulf and drag the whole region into a war that nobody can fully predict or control. This is the world's energy system under assault. And the outcome of the decisions being made right now by generals and presidents and kings and diplomats will determine whether the lights stay on in your home, whether the fuel stays in your car, whether the food stays on your table. This is not a story happening to someone else in a distant land. This story is happening to all of us, simultaneously, right now. We will continue to bring you every development as it unfolds, because this is not a story that pauses overnight. The tankers are not moving, the fires are not fully out, and the world is waiting with bated breath and rising anxiety to find out what comes next. Stay with us, stay informed, and above all, stay aware of the stakes, because they have never been higher in your lifetime. This has been your special report. Good night and stay safe. The growing conflict involving the US, Israel, and Iran could have serious consequences for global energy supplies. If the situation worsens, oil and gas shipments could be disrupted, affecting countries worldwide. In this video, we explore the risks and what it could mean for the global economy. Be sure to check out the video appearing on your screen for more insights and updates.